Welcome everyone to Overcome Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to talk with a strong man, friend of mine here from Texas, Austin Haye. Thank you very much for being in the show today, Austin.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Yuri.
All right, my friends. I would like to start this conversation because the main topic of this podcast is overcome. And a lot of the athletes that I interview, usually there is a story behind overcoming obstacles and injuries and things like that. And I know a little bit about your background, and I know that you had a big injury that you had to have surgery back in 2014. And I remember reading something that you wrote back in 2017 when that you were still struggling mentally to pass that fear of re-injury. So first of all, how that injury happened, and fast forward now, do you already feel that you fully back, or do you still struggling with those feelings?
Okay. Well, I think the injury originated back in 2012 when I was, or maybe in 2011 when I was in a car wreck. I was hit from behind at a stoplight and had some bulging disc from that. Foolishly enough, when I was hit, it was actually a back day at the gym. And so I was like, well, I was just in a car wreck, but I still need to go to the gym. And so that day after work, I actually had to go into work. I was on my way to work and had to show up at work after the car wreck. I was pretty miserable. But after that, I went to the gym and tried to, go heavy on deadlift and ended up, slipping a couple discs doing that because my back was so tight. So
that is very unique. You just went through a car accident and you went straight to deadlift. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid. It's not something you should ever do or really look at as like inspirational. That was just being dumb. But I was 22 at the time, or 23. That was pretty dumb to go in the gym right after a car wreck, and that kind of led to a series of chronic back problems where I was slipping discs on and off. Probably for the next 2 or 3 years, that would be an issue where the disc would just kind of pop out of place, and I'd go back to the chiropractor and get all these treatments, and still it dealt with the disc slipping. And then eventually in 2014, I was in the gym going pretty heavy. I had just pulled 675 for a set of 3, and then was doing a back down set of 655 for 5. And on my, I think, 4th or 5th rep, the disc actually ruptured in my lower back. It was between L4 and S1, or L5 S1. And so I immediately knew it was real bad when it happened, because it's a crippling pain. If you've ever had, any kind of sciatic nerve pain in your back that's caused by a bulging disc or a ruptured disc, it kind of puts you on your knees real quick. And so that started me down the road of trying to get it fixed, where I went to a back doctor that got me on cortisone shots, and I had to do cortisone shots for so many months before they would look at doing back surgery. And after I finished about 6 months worth of treatment, or maybe 4 months worth of treatment, there was still no progress. I still had, all of the residual sciatic nerve pain, and couldn't, use my left side very well, at least from the waist down. I got approved for surgery and went in the day after Christmas in 2014 for a microdiscectomy, where they went in and they shaved off that part of the disc that had ruptured out and was pressing on the nerve. And from that, I was not bedridden, but couldn't be on my feet for the next 6 weeks. I was supposed to just recover pretty hard. And after that, the doctor cleared me to do whatever I wanted. I was like, "Are you sure I can do whatever I want?" And he said, "Sure, go deadlift if you want to deadlift." So, it was, I guess, February. It's in February. I, just went to the gym, put, warmed up to 315 on deadlift and did a set of 10 on it, and thought I was going to die because I was so out of shape, but also just real weak. But everything came back real quick. That in April, I ended up deadlifting, I think it was like 795 on a tire deadlift in a competition, and it was the most I had ever pulled from on that particular implement. So the bounce back was real quick, because that muscle memory's there. But I still struggled with, you know, nerve pain here and there, and discs still slipping.
Yeah, but the main point that you said is that you were mentally struggling because you were afraid to re-injury. So you had that
Yeah.
mental blocker.
Yeah, and that's something that anytime I would deadlift, it would get real tight back there, and it still gets tight, because there's a lot of scar tissue in my lower back from the surgery, and so that's a mental barrier that or a discomfort I have to get comfortable with, because it's something that I feel every time I deadlift, and then when I go real heavy, I mean, it actually hurts, but it's not like an injured hurt. It's like, this is a real old injury, and just be aware of that. So
So in the beginning, were you trying to avoid go heavy just because you were feeling this mental blocker that you might injure you again, or you didn't really care and you went heavy anyway?
initially I did, but I mean, my confidence was regained pretty quickly. It wasn't until I started approaching numbers that were like at or above my old max and deadlift, or if I was going really heavy on a yoke carry where you feel a lot of pressure in your lower back, those kind of things scared me. But after you do them, after you go up to that line and nothing happens, you push it a little bit further and a little bit further,
And then you got used to.
and then you get used to it. Exactly. And I was just reassured constantly by my doctor and then other people that have been through the same thing, that if you exercise proper form, if you get your core strong, then you're not going to have to worry about it again. So I had to really clean up my form. I had issues with a lot of rounding in my lower back and that SI joint, just kind of amateur form on deadlift with I think a lot of people struggle with. And so I kind of got that nailed down to where there's very little bend in my lower back. If anything's going to bend, it's my upper back, in which if your upper back bends, that's okay. There's a lot more play in your upper back than there is in your lower back, or it's a lot more safe to bend that under load.
Mm-hmm. So if moving forward 7 years later, because that was 2014, so 7 years later now, when you look back, do you feel like you learn a lot from that time and you kind of feel there was actually a good thing that happens? Because a lot of people that had big injuries, many years later, they start to say, well, I actually think it was a good thing that happened to me because I learned a lot. So do you have that feeling, or you still feel that it just slow you down?
I don't think it really slows me down. Obviously, it slowed down progress, and it's a lesson that I would have liked to learn an easier way. I wish I could have avoided the injury, but I think it does give me an outlet to talk to other people that have had similar injuries or that are dealing with back problems, because that's, bulging discs is probably one of the most common injuries in strongman. And so, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people about getting their back healthy and fixing their form so that they don't have to deal with, a surgery like I did down the road.
You said that this is a common thing with strongman. So did you meet any like pro strongman that had that issue before on that level?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot more severely than I did. I know Derek Poundstone. I think he's had to have several fusions because he's had discs just completely rupture in his back. I only had one. I think he had multiple.
You have one fusion?
I didn't have a fusion. It was a discectomy. It
Oh,
was a
okay, yeah, yeah.
micro discectomy where they just shaved off a portion of
Okay.
the uh, the disc. But he's got full blown fusion, and I'm fortunate that I didn't have to go that route. That the doctor was able to save most of the disc. Um, but yeah, it is a common thing, and a lot of people they know that it is common. You kind of accept that when you go into the sport, and because there are other people dealing with it, you figure out how to deal with it as well, how they rehabbed it, how they got back on their feet. If you're talking to kind of the normal average person, that would be something that could be life altering, where they could be crippled for the rest of their life. But because, you know, me and other athletes in my field are utilizing, free weight training and things like that, we're able to build our bodies back up and build the muscles up in ways that support and protect those injuries and prevent it from happening again.
So, what would be your advice to actually avoid this in the first place? Is this to focus on form, to focus on protection, like tight belt? What do you do today to avoid this to happen, for example?
Yeah, a lot of it's working on form. A lot of it's working on flexibility, and mobility. Getting all kinds of tune-ups from the chiropractor, whether that's soft tissue work or Graston work done. Graston was something that I was introduced to shortly before my surgery to help break up scar tissue, and I went ahead and invested in my own Graston tools because it's something that I use now to help break up that myofascial tissue and loosen everything up before big lifts. Um, and and also taking time with warm-ups. I mean, I used to go straight into heavy stuff and just push through it and kind of, really
We
be
all
aggressive.
we all been there. Try to go straight to
Yeah,
the heavy stuff.
yeah, and be more aggressive than I should be, to try and push through, areas when I'm struggling, when my body's telling me, no, you need to take more time to warm up, where, I'm still too cold to do what you're wanting me to do. Um, so it is just a completely different shift in how you approach training. Unfortunately, it does tack on more time, but, it's better to put that time in up front so you're not spending time on the couch recovering from
Yeah.
an injury that could put you off your feet for months.
When you warm up, do you usually warm up just with like a light set, or you do warm up with like bands, for example? Because a lot of people do warm up with bands, right?
Yeah, I like to use bands, especially on upper body, to help get rotator cuffs and delts all warm and loosened up. Also like to use, bands on, try and get like my hamstrings and my lower back firing good. One of the best things I've found though for like, if I'm going to be hitting heavy deadlifts, or to do some light box squats,
Hmm.
just, practice being real explosive off the box. That was exercise or warm up that I picked up from Josh Bryant when I trained with him a couple of years ago. He was helping me prep for a big deadlift, and that was one of the best things I picked up.
But do you do this without weight or with lightweight?
With lightweight? The heaviest I might go is like 315, 225. It just depends on what I'm going for that day. But the goal is speed. You want to be fast.
Explosion, right?
Explosion. You don't want it to be a grinder. It should be something that activates the fast twitch muscle and gets your quads firing, to help you, get the weight moving off the floor.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty good. How are you adjust, and how did you adjust during this whole pandemic that we've been in 2020 and 2021? I've seen that you looks like you competed recently. How were you prepping for that during this pandemic, or it didn't change that much your routine?
I didn't have too much of a change in my routine. I I have a gym in my garage at home that has some of the strongman implements, and I've got plenty of weight there. So when everything got shut down, I was still just training at home in my garage, and that's kind of the way I would have been doing it anyway if the gyms had been open. Just because I want to spend more time with my kids. I got two little kids, 3-year-old, he's soon to be 4, and then an 18-month-old. So time away from them is kind of not really something I want to go for right now, at least at this stage in life. But also, like at the end of 2019, I got a heart test done. It's called a calcium score, and the results came back pretty bad.
Wow.
It showed that my calcium score was a lot higher than it should be for someone my age, and that's due to plaque buildup in the arteries around my heart. And so at the end of 2019, I was kind of reassessing whether or not I should continue doing this, at least on an elite level, because I'd received an invite to the Amateur World Series for 2020. I decided to go ahead and compete in that back in the spring of 2020. They had it there at the Arnold Sports Festival in Columbus. It was kind of a weird show because only athletes were allowed to be there. Like I don't think they let any kind of family members or coaches in. It was just athletes, and we all were competing together. But I finished that show and kind of stepped back just to really focus on longevity and heart health. Because, as you know, being in this realm, there's a lot of seemingly healthy young guys that just kind of drop dead. And I didn't want to be in that.
Well, why did you do this test in the first place? Were you feeling anything, or it was just like a routine test?
Well, so one of my best friends, he actually had a heart attack, and he's in his early 40s. I think he was 41 at the time, and he had the heart attack, I think, in 2000. It's either 2018 or 19, because I got the test done soon after he got it. He had his heart attack, and I was like, we've got similar lifestyles. I need, you're just 10 years older than me. I need to figure out if I'm okay too. And sure enough, I got a test done, that shows the calcium buildup around the arteries by my heart, and it showed that I was actually on the pathway to an early heart attack, which is
that's scary.
It's scary, yeah. And so it makes you reassess your diet, the things you're putting in your body and the way you're training, and so after I finished the Arnold in the spring of 2020, I kind of stepped back from competing and just really focused on doing all of this in a healthy way. And so that means monitoring blood pressure and cholesterol. Those are the big ones, because I wasn't doing anything to mitigate any kind of increases in my cholesterol levels, because they were historically really high. The bad cholesterol was really high. Good cholesterol was like next to nothing. And so that's what caused all the buildup, in the arteries. But after kind of stepping back, I kind of thought to myself, I really miss competing. And I'd like to still compete. I may not be able to compete on the same level just because I can't, eat the same way that I was when I'm competing, because I have to be conscious of my cholesterol levels. I can't put anything in my body that's going to raise those levels or raise blood pressure either. So my focus then just kind of turned on doing this in a healthy way that I can ensure that I'm not doing any additional damage. And so the contest I just did last weekend, I did that on like 4 weeks notice. They kind of had a low athlete enrollment on it. It was set to be probably the heaviest contest here in Texas this year. I really wanted to do it, but I didn't think my body was ready for it because I had just been doing kind of maintenance stuff. I hadn't been training heavy. I hadn't been training any of the events either. But I decided to throw my hat in it just because, I wanted to be there to support my friends that were putting on the contest, as well as, get to catch up with other athletes that I hadn't seen in a while. So
And
I
how
did.
was? How did you do?
I think he ended up fourth by half a point, which I'm kind of annoyed about that I didn't at least make podium. But I was kind of impressed with, or at least satisfied with my performance on such low notice, and with, you know, my, I guess, health being at the forefront of all my training.
Yeah, of course. That was pretty good result. And when you say half a point, it's like the there is no weight division, right? In strongman, it's like everyone together, right?
No, there's several different weight divisions.
Oh,
So
really?
I'm in the middleweight division, and that goes up 231 pounds, which is 105 kilos. And then anything above that is considered heavyweight. And depending on the contest, they may break heavyweights into subclasses. But I stick out in the just in the middleweight class. I used to compete as a heavyweight just because I thought it was more fun to tango with the big guys, and I could actually do it. But now, I think I do better in the middleweights than I do with the big guys.
So you actually drop weight after the Arnold.
A little bit. I mean, I hover in the probably 240s, mid 240s without much effort.
So even with your diet change and everything, you were you still able to maintain the weight? That's pretty impressive because.
Well, I had been up to 275 pounds as recently as probably 2015 or 16. And then I started cutting down and wanting to compete in the middleweight class because I just couldn't hang with the big guys anymore. They were just too statically strong for me to keep up with. I could keep up with them on moving events. Like if you give me a medley to do with them, I could usually beat them just because I was quicker on my feet. But if you're talking about static strength overhead and stuff, there's no way I could keep up with those guys. So I decided to drop some weight, and a lot of it was water and fat. I mean, you can peel back, that water and fat layer, and lose a lot of weight. And I did. I was able to lean up pretty easily, and that was just a matter of, decreasing my rest sets, adding more reps, cutting out some of the junk food, eating less, and it all just kind of came off quickly. I'm still fairly young to where my metabolism works good. I don't have to.
What is your food intake now in calories? It's like 3,000.
Oh, I have no clue.
Oh,
I've never.
you don't even count that?
No, I don't. I probably should. I should definitely measure it, but like, I've been doing it for so long. I've been lifting for so long, and I guess dieting, doing meal prep for so long that I just know what I need to eat to get to where I need to go, or to get the body composition I need. It works for me. It's probably not the right way to do it, but it's just something I figured out internally.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's
Work.
interesting because at least for me, if I'm not measuring, I have no idea where I am. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, but still, I like to play around. Drop 100 grams of carbs here and there. Measure. It
Yeah.
works well.
Yeah. Well, with strongman, you have to, and powerlifting's the same way. You have to have a more carb dense diet just because you have to,
Right.
have those glycogen levels high to recruit the muscles the way that they need to, and work them the way they need to work. So
Now, with this extra concern about heart health and everything, did you start incorporating some cardio in your routine?
yeah, I started doing some more treadmill, but I think the biggest thing was probably some agility work, which is a lot of stuff that just keeps your heart rate high. So like the agility ladder, jump rope, and then doing sprints. Once a week, I try and get out and do 8 rounds of sprints. I think I'm probably running 50 yards per sprint.
That sounds like Josh Bryant's program.
It probably is. We think on the same meathead brain wavelength, but it's not like I'd like to get into running, or at least jogging, just because I think it would be even better for me. But just getting out and doing just the sprints is a lot more than what I was doing before, and a lot more than what a lot of other athletes in similar situations are doing, because they're just focused on lifting weights and not really working on the cardio aspect of
Yeah,
things.
but the running is something that I talked to Josh about that as well. At least for heavy guys, it's very tough on the knees. So if you don't have knee problem, it's okay. But for people that are heavy and they have knee problems, it's pretty aggressive on the knees.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel it because I'm flat-footed and I'm in the 240s. So, and the shoes that I wear are cross trainers, so they don't have a big sole on them. I need to get some actual running shoes with more cushion in them, because that would help save my shins and my knees whenever I am doing sprints. But um, it's right now it's working for me. I'm enjoying it. When I used to dread those days when I'd have to get out there and do sprints, but now it's kind of refreshing because I know after I finish that the next day, my legs are going to feel real fresh, because I'll typically do that after a leg training session, like the day after. And so I've got a little bit of soreness and stiffness going into it. But then after I'm done, it's kind of all that's cleared out.
Going back a little bit for the surgery in 2014, how long was your recovery from the standpoint of not being able to train? So you had a surgery and you were out without training for like 3 months, 4 months.
It was about 6 weeks.
That was really fast.
Or it may have been 8 weeks. It was 6 or 8 weeks. It was very short. But while I was waiting, and as soon as the pain stopped, because like the first 72 hours after the surgery is probably the most pain I've ever been in my life, after all the pain meds wear off that you get from the hospital. I just did a bunch of body weight stuff. So push-ups, air squats, whatever I could. And I was working from home during that time because I couldn't get in the car and drive. So, I had plenty of time to, do that kind of body weight work while I was, at the house.
But during those 8 weeks, there were any point in time that you were like not feeling well because you were not able to train, and knowing you always want to lift heavy and everything. Did you have those moments of frustration and going to that place where you are like, wow, why did this happen to me? Things like that.
I don't think that I did. I can't remember a time when I was kind of low on myself like that. I knew that taking time off is what I needed, and I knew that the muscle would come back quickly because that's just how it works. And if I was smart with my recovery, I could come back bigger and better than ever. And I just kind of kept that in mind. It was hard to kind of see yourself kind of wasting away in the mirror. Your clothes aren't fitting the way they were before because you lose the mass and all that stuff. But, I think you just have to get over that and keep a long-term perspective in mind that, this is just temporary, almost acting like I'm sick right now.
Right.
I'm not completely healthy. And as soon as you kind of accept that, then I think that's how you get to the next step.
What about the return? Because that was okay. That's a good mindset to be when you are on that place. But then you go back to lift, and now your numbers are way far from what you used to lift. So now it's more a patience. Like need to be patient to get back up. But I'm pretty sure that at the beginning you felt a bit frustrated. As you said, you were almost dying doing deadlift with 315.
Yeah. I think it was a little bit frustrating, but I've always kind of enjoyed the pursuit of those goals and the rebuild, because whenever you train hard, and this from years of physical training too, that you take time off. Like you have an off season where you're not, trying to ramp up your numbers. You're not trying to put on a bunch of weight. And I look forward to those seasons when you come out of those off periods, those off cycles, whatever you want to call them, and you're starting at kind of a new baseline, and you see how fast I can build back up to where I was, and then go above that.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed that because, it almost feels like the first time, or the newbie gains that you get whenever you first start lifting in the gym, as a teenager, whatever, you just kind of blow up quickly. It feels like that over again to me. And so I've always kind of enjoyed coming or starting on, a new training cycle and having a baseline and being able to see progress every week. It's not obviously progress in a direction that's higher than I've ever been, but that's just the way I think physical training should work. You can't always be redlining your body. You can't always be in peak physical shape year round. You're going to have to take time off. You're going to have to change things up and then come back at it at a lower level than where you left off, but you'll get back there. It takes time, and you got to put in the work.
But do you think that this happens also with like pro athletes? Like, for example, Brian Shawn, he will also go through those moments of up and down, because it almost feels like they are always on peak performance, right?
Yeah, I think he certainly does have those peaks and valleys in his training. As far as the mental aspect of it goes, I know he's a very calculated person, and he's more concerned about probably the science behind his performance and not necessarily how he's feeling. Whereas most people, I think, are going to be more emotionally driven or driven by what's in the mirror.
Yeah,
I know him and a lot of other pro athletes are more calculated in their approach. So I don't think that weighs into as much of his training as it does to other people. He's going to be working off a percentage when he starts prepping for World's Strongest Man. He knows that he's going to have to do his sets at this percentage level this week, and then the next week it's going to be this and this and this, and then it'll eventually get him to where he's peaked for contest. He's not going to be someone that's always increasing his
numbers.
His maximum. Yeah, he's not always going to be increasing those numbers. He's going to increase those, and he's going to set PRs in contest, and that's the way most real pros are going to do it. Is they're going to wait to perform when it counts, and not in the gym or at a random time. It's going to be saving it up for when it matters most.
Did it happen to you as well, that your PRs were always in competition time rather than in training?
No. I think I've matured a lot in that prep, or in that aspect, because the week before contest I used to max out just because my body would be peaked, and I would feel really good, and so I would hit some sort of PR, and then I'd go into contest and I'd do okay. Sometimes I'd win.
But you did not do as okay as your PR, right?
Well, it would be a PR in something unrelated.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not the way you should be prepping. Like the week before contest, you should be deloading, letting your body rest. But I was stupid with it. I was feeling good. I was feeling aggressive. And so I would, dive headlong into some sort of ridiculous PR that I wanted to attempt that week. But now, I do try and save those PRs for contests. Like when I was prepping for the Arnold last spring, we had a deadlift medley. And this is probably the most daunting event for me when I was looking at the events. Is you had to do an axle deadlift. So you use a 2-inch thick axle bar. They had 620 pounds on it. So you got to lift that 3 times. And then you had to go to a power bar, which is one that doesn't have any bend in it, and do 650 pounds for as many reps as possible within a time frame of 1 minute. So when I was prepping for that, the last heavy week that I had in prep, I missed like all my lifts. for that. And I forget what the weights were, but they're fairly heavy. I think on the axle deadlift, I was supposed to do 600 for a couple reps, and then on the power bar deadlift, I was supposed to do, I think, like 620 or something for some reps, and I missed it. I think I may have gotten a couple on the axle, didn't get any on the power bar, and then I had my deload week in between, and then I show up to contest day, and I pulled 6 reps total, 3 on the axle, 3 on the power bar. Never done that before. But I had to reassure myself that, you've done the training, the muscle's there for you to recruit. You just need to commit to the lift. And so when I got out on the floor, getting ready to lift, I kind of had to reassure myself over and over again, like, you put in the work, the strength's there, you just need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's something that's always held me back in competition, is not having that mental fortitude to be able to kind of go through my checklist and say, you put in the work, you did this lift here, so you should be able to perform at this level. Not just do it.
Yeah, because it's interesting. One will think that when you put a PR in contest time, you are so used to that weight because you've done that weight many times before. But what you're saying is that usually it's not how that works, right? Elite athletes will peak at the contest and they will PR at the contest.
Yeah. And with something like that, with a deadlift event like that, I probably wouldn't be touching contest weight because it is so heavy until I was actually at contest. I would always be going below it. But on some of the other events, like if you're looking at like a keg toss medley or something like that, it would make sense to go heavier than what's in the event, just so you can train on the explosive aspect of that movement, being able to throw a heavier keg over the bar than you're actually going to be throwing in contest. It recruits a whole lot less. It puts a lot of stress on your body too. You're not having to, sacrifice your central nervous system throwing kegs like you would if you're having to train deadlifts super heavy.
Do you think the same applies for the stones? If you train with the stones that are the same weight as the competition?
Yeah, and you kind of have to with stones because they don't have stones like for all different weights and sizes. They're just kind of generally like, well, here's your 400-pound stone, here's a 350-pound stone, here's a 275-pound stone. There's nothing in between. That's what you got to work with. It's not like dumbbells where you can have 5-pound increments or whatever.
Well, but you do have those sandbags that can kind of simulate the stone, right?
Are you talking about like simulating in a commercial gym or?
No, it's at home. Like you have a sandbag that you could simulate the movement of putting the stone in place. That's what I'm saying. Training with.
Oh, yeah. I like to get my hands on the actual stones because trying to simulate the movement just isn't the same. Because you could simulate it using a sandbag or, some weight plates if you're grabbing the weight plates around like the round way or whatever. But it's not the same as putting your hands on the actual stones. So like if I'm prepping for a contest that has stones, I'll go to a gym, several times throughout my prep just to train the stones.
Mm-hmm.
And there are plenty of gyms in the DFW area that have stones. So that's not hard for me to come by. It's just I don't have room in my garage for a full set of Atlas stones.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't train them often enough to justify having those laying around either.
On this last competition, did you guys have stones there too?
No stones. We had max axle clean and press, max axle deadlift, a keg load medley, a sandbag medley, and then a tire flip for time, I guess.
I saw that tire, man. How heavy was that tire? It was gigantic.
It was big, but they had 660 marked on the tire, so it wasn't super heavy. I've had to do heavier tires in contests. They switched it out last minute because I think they were worried about not enough people completing the event because it was originally supposed to be an 800-pound tire.
Wow.
Which is which is more along the lines of like a normal tire weight for a competition of that level for the middleweight class. Like when you get into, like if you're talking about heavyweights, they would be doing a 900 or 1,000 pound tire, but they're doing the 800-pound tire because, you know, we didn't do it.
So that one was 600 pounds.
It was 660, I think, is what was written on the tire. Tire flip's always been kind of one that makes me nervous because I tore my left bicep partially doing a tire flip in contest back in 2015, I think. And I was flipping like an 800-pound tire, and you know, I had been sweating all day because the contest was outside and it was in the middle of the summer, and I was just real dehydrated. And went to flip it, and I felt, you know, my bicep pop. Ooh. And you know, I flipped another tire, and then I just called it because I didn't want to, you know, completely tear it all the way through. But
so you didn't have to do any surgery on this one?
No, you know, the bicep, you can see where it tore, but it wasn't a complete, you know, complete tear where it rolled up my arm completely, but enough to scare me so that anytime I do tire flips, I'm wearing, you know, elbow sleeves and to try and keep that protected as best I can. And then, you know, using more, driving my shoulders into the tire more and not lifting as much with my biceps, as usually happens. But yeah, it's one of those ones that always kind of makes me nervous now. And I had practiced it once before this competition, and you know, I didn't really push it that hard. And then when I went to compete, you know, that was kind of the second time I'd touched a tire in probably 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So during those 4 weeks that you prep, you didn't prep with tire at all?
I just, one time, I went up to the gym just to kind of feel it out, and got in 2 laps with it. But
it was not as heavy, right?
No, I think it was 600 pounds, and it was a smaller tire, but I wanted to go a little bit heavier because I knew the tire was supposed to be 800 pounds. I wanted to go heavier, but I was just not feeling it that day because I had trained sandbags before that, and that had kind of taken it out of me. But you know, I was okay, you know, at least finishing the event like I did in contest. I could have gone a lot faster, but I was just so worried about the bicep that I was, you know, took my time with it.
But it was really good. I saw that video. And any plans for other competition this year, or are you gonna give a break?
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing. I think it's called the Invictus at the Europa. It's a different strongman organization that puts that one on. The one I did this past weekend was through North American Strongman Corporation, or Strongman Corp. And then this one's for the United States Strongman. They're just like IPF versus USAPL, like you just have different organizers. So I'm thinking about doing that one because I've got some family that's doing that one. I think it'd be fun to do.
So that one is July, right?
Yeah, it's June or July. I can't remember which one, but I'll start prepping for that kind of now, I guess. Just real light, not going too crazy with it. As far as that goes, I haven't put anything else on the calendar. I'd like to do 1 or 2 more, but you know, I haven't committed to anything yet.
Oh, that's cool, man. I'm really happy that you were able to take the time to heal yourself, to get better with your heart and everything, and you are able to compete on this level, you know, doing a more light and healthy prep, and enjoying the lifestyle. You naturally is a strong man, right? I mean, it's something that is in you. So it's good to see that you continue to make progress, even after changing the whole diet and everything.
Yeah, I don't know if it's progress in terms of strength, but certainly progress in terms of health. And, you know, heart health isn't one of those things that you can get over like a repair like you can a torn muscle.
Yeah.
It's something you got to kind of keep in mind the rest of your life. So it's not it's not over and done with. You know, I still need to get another test done to see if some of the things that I did this past year helped alleviate some of the buildup. I'm not sure when I'm going to get that test done, but that's kind of the next milestone to me, to be able to measure progress to see if I've actually been able to do any kind of impact there and on it.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. So I think it was a great conversation. Get some insights from you. Is actually the first time that I have like a strong man on the show. I mean, I interview Greg Thumper that he used to do strongman in the past, but I think you are the first one. I actually talked to Brian Shaw to be on the show, but during the time that I talked to him, he was extremely busy. He was doing some other business. He has a lot of things going on in his life right now. So he said that he will come later on at some point. But it's good to have you here. I saw you competing, and I was like, man, I need to talk to Austin to get some updates.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I really appreciate you having me on your show, especially with some of the prestigious guests you've had beforehand.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Keep killing it, and keep us updated on your progress. Very inspiring, as usual.
Thank you, Yuri.
All right. Take care, and see you all next time.